Hey there, friend. Welcome back to the From My Life course. This is video number 6. Look, today we're going to be talking about relationships and the power that relationships have on our life. You know, it really was a shocker to me when I began to take a look in my life and begin to realize just how much influence the people around me had upon me. And it seems like it so often influences us on the negative side, but the truth is it'll influence us on the positive side as well. Because we really do begin to take on the patterns or we begin to look like the people that we hang out with. The Bible says that if you surround yourself with an angry person, you'll take on his ways. Like you'll begin to become like him. I remember like when I began to work in different jobs, and I worked in a lot of just mechanic body shop type places, and it's just a lot of times it is rough for people. And man, it was just like so much foul language, so many dirty jokes, so much stuff that just kind of went on, things that were said and laughed about and, looked at. And it's just like it begins to weigh on you. And what's crazy is you begin to talk like them. You begin to think like them. You begin to act like them. Like, it's just a natural thing because peer pressure is very real. If you've ever been kayaking, I remember we went several times as a kid, and it's way easier to float downstream than it is to paddle upstream. Like you could get in that kayak and you could just be paddling along, and having a good time. But if you ever had to turn around and go back upriver, it was very difficult. There were times where the river was flowing so fast and the current was so strong, you couldn't paddle back upstream. And I've been there in life where the influence of the people around you is so strong, you just go with the flow, even if it's against your own standards, your own morals, your own values. The solution to this is you got to get in a different river. You've got to get around the right people. The Bible says that if you surround yourself with wise people, you become wise. No brainer, right? So listen, in this video, I'm going to talk about the power of negative influences. We're going to talk about how to understand, how to find and, just kind of discern whether a relationship's good or bad. And we're going to talk about red flags and different things. And we're going to talk about how to get free from those bad relationships. And in the next video, video number 7, I'm going to talk about positive relationships, what kind of relationships we should have, and how to attract them into our life. So I thought of a story. I remember when this really started to impact my life. I started working with a guy, and he's a pretty good guy. We had a lot of good conversations. We had a lot in common. He was a young dad. I was a young dad. He was a young husband. I was a young husband. And, we were doing this job. We was working. And I remember as I began to get closer to him, I realized that he had a lot of bitterness and anger towards his dad. And there was just a lot of things growing up that had happened to him and he had been through, and it was something that he really held on tight to. And every chance he got, he was always just spewing that anger, that bitterness, and he was always talking with me about that stuff. And then he would, he'd talk about other people and other things that had happened to him, other people had done him wrong. And there was just so much of that animosity and just hatred in his life. And I never really caught on. Like I knew it was there and I understood it, but I didn't realize how much that could affect me. And as time went on, me and him, some things happened, some things come up, and I actually made some comments to him about some stuff that offended him. And I didn't even know it. I didn't even realize it had happened. And so I'm just trucking along and just like everything is fine and dandy. But on the other side, he gets mad. He gets angry at me, and it begins to eat on him. And that same bitterness and hatred that was such a part of him began to turn towards me. So he began to go behind my back and undermine long-term relationships that I'd had with other people. People that I had coached, people that I had pastored, people that I had built good relationships with, and he began to go in and spread hatred, spread lies, spread discontent. And it really caused a lot of problems, a lot of struggles in my life. And when it all came to a head, like we talked back and forth. I was like, dude, I didn't even know it happened. And, he was like, oh, yeah. He kind of made light of it. But from then on, like we began to go separate ways, and things were never the same. As I looked back on that, I realized I should have paid attention to the kind of person he was. Like, I should have recognized the bitterness that was there, the hatred that was there towards other people. And I should have been very careful to not allow him so close, so much into my life until he got healed, until he got free from the things that he was dealing with. But it's very easy to get caught up in relationships and to build friendships with people that don't have the same level of values and moral standards in their life. And we can be lonely, and we can feel like, we don't have good friends, and we can long for companionship, and we allow those things to happen. We allow those people in. We allow those influences to take place simply because we want a friend. We want somebody to talk to. We want somebody to love us. It can happen in a romantic relationship, and we get involved in a bad relationship simply because we feel like we need them. We need them for validation. We need them to feel good. We feel alone, whatever it may be. It's very important that you look out for red flags. All right? Now, what do you do when you're in that situation? Right? Like maybe you're in a bad relationship, or you're in a bad friendship, or you're in a bad work environment, or you have family members that are a negative influence in your life. How do you handle these situations? Well, every situation is unique, but there's really two main ways that I teach and that I found in my life to be effective when handling bad relationships, negative relationships, the wrong influences in my life. So the first one is, there are some relationships that you've got to destroy out of your life. Like what that looks like is, there are some people that are so toxic, that are such a bad influence, that affects you in such a negative way that you've got to remove all ties with them. You've got to completely cut off, completely remove any association with them. I talked to a friend of mine who was telling me some of his story. And he said that he was working, and he was in an environment that was pretty bad. There was a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, a lot of bad things going on. But he wasn't really involved, but it was pretty heavily impacting him. And so he was kind of there in the mid-ground. And it was about the time he told me that his daughter was going to be born. And he realized that in order to be the father that he needed to be, in order to be able to raise that girl like he wanted to raise them, he knew he was going to have to make some changes. And he told me, he said, Nathan, I tried to put some boundaries in place, and I tried to make some changes. He said, but the influence was so strong there at that work environment, at that place. He said that I had to quit. I had to leave. I had to find another job. There are some situations where that is the case. There are just some people where you say, look, I can't deal with this. I can't allow this influence in my life. I have to shut it down. This can also apply to romantic relationships. I've seen it many times where a young lady or a young man would go back to the same toxic relationships over and over and over because they had such a low sense of self-worth. They felt like they would never be able to find anybody else, that nobody else would actually love them or whatever it was. And so they would stay in a place that was killing them, that was hurting them, that was just such... I've even seen it in abusive relationships where they would just continue to stay simply because they didn't feel like they had any value. Now, I've been teaching you, and if you find yourself in that situation, you've begun the process of building your confidence, building your self-worth, and you understand that you have more value than that. And if you find yourself in that place, you're going to have to come to a moment where you realize you're more than that. You're better than that. You deserve better than that. And you've got to remove that relationship out of your life. For my friend, in his job situation, it was quitting his job. It was moving. It was doing different things. In romantic relationships, it could be completely shutting that off, breaking all ties, deleting the number, putting some barriers in place. Whatever you have to do, get rid of it. Now, look, that doesn't mean you still text on the weekends. Doesn't mean you still hang out and, go to parties or go on vacation or do whatever. Like, destroyed means it's finished. It means it's done. You need to take a look at your life. Who are the people that need to go? Who are the people that are pulling you down? Who are the people that are keeping you from fulfilling your destiny, from following your purpose? Who are the people that are pressuring you to do things you don't want to do? Who are the people that are not treating you with the respect and the love that they should? My friend, listen, you deserve better. You're worth more than that. You can get rid of those relationships. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is there's some relationships that simply need to be distanced. A lot of times this can fall into the job situation. There's a difference between going to work and working a job and sharing conversation and things that are job related, doing those things, than there is hanging out on the evenings and the weekends. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. So it's okay if sometimes you're in job situations where you might not just click or just vibe with everybody there, but you can still live your life and you can still have the right standards in your life. So sometimes there's just some distance that needs to be there. And you need to say, look, we're coworkers, but we're not friends. We're not best buds. We don't hang out. Like, you can draw a line. You can set some boundaries in your life there. But now where this kind of gets tough, as it did for me, is there are some relationships that are close, such as family. Family who, they're also a negative influence. They're also somebody that's like a wet towel in your dreams, right? They dampen it, they kill it, they smother it. Who are speaking negativity, who's always doubting you, running you down, whatever it may be. My wife and I faced this situation with some family members of our own. And what we had to do is we had to come to a place to realize, look, these relationships don't necessarily need to be destroyed. We just need to put some distance between us and them. And it was hard. It took a lot of effort. It took a lot of sticking to our guns and really, making up our mind. And we made sure that we were very kind, compassionate, loving, but we stood firm in what we decided in our decisions. And we began to set boundaries. We began to say, look, there's some things we do. There's some things we don't do. There's some things we're going to deal with. There's some things that we're not going to tolerate. And we just begin to set boundaries. And what we found is those relationships that were the most toxic, they began to distance. Can you imagine if you got two people on a road and one takes a turn just off just a hair, over time they get further and further apart. And that's what I found happened with those negative relationships. That as time went on, the distance grew further and further because we decided we're going to go this way. We're going to follow this set of standards in our life. We're going to live like this. We're not going to tolerate these things. We're not going to do these things. We're not going to talk this way. We're not going to go these places, whatever it was. And as time, that separation began to grow. So let me tell you, my friend, this is not easy. This can be some difficult moments. This can be some hard conversations. But you got to make sure that you understand you're somebody who's called. You have a purpose. You have a mission. You have a reason to be doing the things that you're doing. You were created to do great things with your life. You've already come so far and been through so many things. You begin to repair your identity. You begin to build your relationship with God. You begin to forgive the past and let it go and embrace the truth. All these different things. So when you come to this, you've got to make sure that you don't allow the wrong people the wrong relationships to rob you of your progress, to kill your momentum. I saw it so many times when I was a youth pastor, where young people would come to me hurting, broken, dealing with so many things. And over time and through the love of God, we would begin to work through those things, and they would begin to find healing. They would begin to find deliverance. They would begin to find their footing. But then something would happen. They would go to a party. They would meet up with somebody. And it was like that draw, that influence, and they begin to pull right back, go right back to the same things that they were living with, simply because a friend called, somebody texted, something happened. You cannot allow the people in your life, the people around you, to bring you down. You have got to make sure that you either distance or destroy those relationships, and that you're honest about that. Right? Don't try to distance a relationship that should be destroyed. Don't destroy a relationship that should be distanced. Take some time and use some wisdom and make sure that you make the right decisions and you put these people in the right categories. Because here's the truth that you need to understand. A lot of times, most every time, you have got to make a break away from the toxic in order for God to bring the good into your life. Here's a way to look at it. The road towards success and stability, strength, purpose in our life is often a lonely road. And you've probably already witnessed this in your life, but when you begin to make forward progress, the people that you used to hang around with, they no longer vibe, right? You no longer connect. There's not that connection like there used to be, because you used to be at this level, and now you've moved up a level. And so it doesn't flow. It don't go together. And you'll find that those relationships start breaking away. Well, then what happens is there's a little season, a little piece of the road that is lonely, that it's a little tough. It may be a little hard to go through. But over time, God will bring more people into your life that's on that level. And you'll begin to meet somebody, and they'll introduce you to other people, and you'll begin to have friends again at a new level, at a new place. The crazy thing about that is, a lot of times as you keep going and you keep moving up that road, sometimes that group of friends will also fade away. And you'll go through another lonely stage again. And then you'll find another group of friends at a next level. Like, it's just the way it is. Because when you're moving forward, you're going to new levels, you're going to new places, and you're going to have to find relationships that are there at that new level. So don't be afraid to lose somebody. Don't be afraid to cut some relationships off, because God has better for you in your future. Remember, you're valuable. You're worth it. You deserve it. Okay, in the next lesson, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to find positive relationships, how to attract those right people into your life so that you can truly become the person that you're meant to be. All right? I'll see you there.